time to get wired, man. It's time to get wired, man. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Time to wire our pick guard. I've got some Emerson Pro pots. I've got some US Tone Works single coils. I got this awesome heavy duty switch. What else do I have? I have a couple little surprise mods we're going to do. But before we do any of that, the pick guard. Now, if you saw the last video, I was going back and forth between three pick guards basically. This fender, which you can see is back in the bag, which should be a clue that I'm not using it. And then I had this guy, came with one of my other guitars as a kit. And the problem is, when I went to match it up on here, holes don't match up. So rather than drill new holes, I decided on choice number 3, use the pick guard that came on the guitar. Because when I put this on here, all the holes match up. But if you remember, it had some stickers on it. It said rat. It had all kinds of nasty old pots in it. And what I did was take all that off. Used some Goo Gone. Got the sticker goo off of there. Then I just took some good old-fashioned cleanser, Comet, on a sponge, some warm water, scrubbed the crap out of it front and back, took all the old shielding off. Then I took some, dried it off, took some car wax, some turtle wax, polished it real good with a couple coats of that, and then buffed it with my orbital sander with a buffing pad on. Now, I've been handling it a lot, and it's got some buffing, circular little, buff marks in it, like you get on your car when you use a buffer or wax it. Wax on, wax off. But aside from that, I think it looks pretty darn good. The important thing is it's going to fit. So before we can solder all this stuff together, first thing I want to do is put some more shielding on here to replace what I took off. Speaking of shielding, there's a shield bug flying around in here. How ironic. Actually, 2 of them. Back with more at 11. All right. What I have here is another one of those ceramic floor tiles, which I like to use to solder. But I don't want to keep putting this on here. This one's not super glossy. It's very smooth, but it's not glossy. I'll just put a towel down here so I can put this down without scratching it up. And we're going to take some of this shielding tape that we used on the inside of the guitar. And I'm basically going to shield the area here where the pots go and the switch, which was shielded from the factory. And I'm also going to do here where the pickups attach to the guard. All right, just about done here. Okay, originally I was just going to shield where the pots and the pickups go, but of course in usual style I went a little overboard. But what I did was I just started one end, put strips down side by side, tried to keep it as neat as possible, and then took a big ass razor blade, ran it all along the side, cut off the excess in here. Try to do it without ruining the part I want to keep. A little mishap here, but that's one thing about shielding tape. If you mess it up too bad, you can always take it off and start over. All right. Aside from the holes, which I will get a punch for, and just punch each of these. Any excess that comes up through here will eventually be removed, so I'm not really worried about that too much. Pocket for the switch. I lose track of where the holes are. I did such a good job of shielding this. I think that's it. Nope. One more. Okay. And all right. Really doesn't matter if all of that sticks through. All right, shielding's done. Now we move on to the next step, which is going to be to mount some of this hardware. And like magic, all the excess scrap is gone. But I forgot to do one thing before I put these pots on, and that was to see if they will fit in the existing holes, which they do not. As I was saying, there's another way to do this. This is a ream. Stick this in there and ream it. This is plastic. This works on wood. Actually probably work on some metals too. It's soft metals. Stick it in there and twist it back and forth. We need to take about 1.5 millimeters off. Almost. All right, that got her. rather than drilling. I just ream it out with the reamer. And putting this through, I can see I need to drive this nut all the way down for the volume pot as far as it'll go. Put this little toothy pot on here, or toothy washer. Goes in there nicely Johnson. Pop that on there. Just tighten her up by hand. There we go. The volume pot is on. Now I just have to do the same thing with these next two holes. Okay, here's my setup. I came home from work tonight and was all excited to, I'm going to solder those pots and get those pickups in. And then I realized, wow, I need to get my act together here, because the last couple times I've done this, it's just been haphazard. So the other day I finished putting the pots in. It was kind of painstaking to figure out exactly where to put them so they were in the optimum positions for my wiring scheme. 5-way switch, I'm not putting the pickups in yet. They're going to go in last. I'm going to do all this wiring first, but I have everything laid out here. Here's my soldering iron. I have a clamp on here with the cable going through, so if this would fall, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to drop in my lap or on the floor. A little copper cleaning sponge for the clean the soldering tip. Shrink tubing, tin copper wire, solder, my little robot extra set arms, capacitors. And I pre-cut all my wires for jack, for the switch. Have some shrink tubing here for the jack wires. So all these pieces are pre-cut and bent, and I know exactly where I'm going to put them. Have my jack here. Small screwdriver, which is handy for holding wire down sometimes when you're soldering. Tweezers, also handy. Small wire cutters, needle nose. Have my wire here, extra wire. Have my wiring diagrams. Yes, I have 3, because I have different things colored in and highlighted, so I know what I'm doing. But this prep will make my wiring job so much easier, rather than doing one thing at a time as you go along, cutting the wires as you go. You're always picking things up and putting them down. This way everything's here that I need. One thing I am going to do though, before I get started, before I put any wires on anything, I am going to pre-tin all these terminals that are going to get a wire or a capacitor or something going into them. Like all 3 on this one, 2 on this one, 2 on this one, and on the switch also. Pre-tinning is just taking your soldering iron, holding it on here, and putting a little bit of solder on around the edge, maybe a little bit in the hole. So when you're ready to put your wire in, you put your iron up there, and you're going to pre-tin the end of the wires too. That's the other thing I have to do, is push back this cloth on here and tin the ends with a little bit of solder. So that way you have solder on both ends of what you're using. You put your iron in there and you heat that up, and you stick your wire in there, and it'll solder up a lot more easily than if you're trying to do it with just bare bones stuff from scratch. And I've learned this from experience. That's the way to go. So that's my next step. And it's getting late and I'm tired and I've spent a lot of time on this, so it's probably going to be not tonight that I do this, but I'm going to do a little of the tinning, and that's what we'll look at when I come back. Okay, here is the 5-way switch finished wiring. Alright, here we have the switch. Here we have a 250K volume pot with a tone bleed capacitor resistor setup on here. What this does is when you turn your volume down, it allows the highs in your tone to remain. So when you turn your volume down, your tone doesn't get all muddy. 500K tone pot. Based on the way I've wired this, this is going to be the only tone pot now. It's going to be a single tone for all 3 pickups because this is a blender pot. These are all Emerson Pro pots. This is the Emerson Pro blender. What this is going to do is allow this 5-way switch to actually blend not only neck and middle, bridge and middle, but also neck and bridge. By turning this all the way up to 10, you bypass it and the 5-way switch operates as normal. But as you bring it back down to 8, 7, 6, you will blend the neck and bridge pickups. Pretty cool setup, I think. My soldering, not 100% beautiful, but a lot better than I've been doing. This takes practice. Practice makes you better. I don't think it ever makes you perfect, but it makes you better. But I think it turned out pretty well. I tried this pre-tinned copper wire for my cross pot ground here, and also grounding this tab to the top. Have a 0.047 capacitor on this 500K tone pot. So I think it's going to sound pretty good. All right, so got the pickups wired to the switch. Like I said, kind of group all these together so they don't cause too much problem. Now we have to get the switch wired. So I fed the wires through up into the body cavity here. To pull them up, get this guy situated. Okay, here we go, right there. I just have to put the screws in there to hold that fast, hold that tight. And these can get soldered onto here, which is going to be interesting. Because one has to go, the hot wire has to go to this, hot wire has to go here, and the ground wire just has to be grounded on top of here, as does the wire from the bridge. So that's where I'm going from here. Okay, here's where we are. We have the jack wire and jack ground and the bridge ground here. Now all these wires that I bunched up in little groups here and tucked down in there, they can't remain there because of this piece. So I have to pull them. They're still bunched together, but I have to pull them out so they don't interfere with this. So we'll see if we can get this thing tucked in here now. Everything's soldered where it's supposed to be, and just have to make sure everything's tucked in, which is the difficult part. I have to put this down. Okay, with a little more tucking in, I got it. Sitting flush. Nothing pinching. It's tight fit. I could have made the jack wires a little bit longer. Would have given me a little more room to play with. But once again, I don't like to have all that loose wire. Even though I do have a lot of extra wire, I didn't cut the pickup wires short in case down the line my son wants to take them out, use them for something else, replace them, whatever. They're still going to have a nice long lead on them. And winding those leads up and putting the zip ties on them keeps them together so it's not all over the place. But it still has to be, because of the way this little piece of wood comes in here, I had to pull them out of that nice cavity I had them tucked into and put them inside this cavity right in here. But everything's there. Now comes the important part. I have to check to make sure I'm getting connection. Okay, got the jack plugged in, hooked up to my amp. Test out the 5-way switch and the pickups. Alright, so I'm up here, neck position. I got neck. No middle, no bridge. Second position should be neck and middle. awesome. No bridge. Middle position, no neck, no bridge, middle. Fourth position should have middle, bridge, no neck. Fifth position, no neck, no middle, just bridge. Perfect. And I have volume, I have tone, and we'll play with the tone blender down the line. So for now, wiring's done. Pickups work, switch works. Next step is going to be put the screws in here, tighten this down, put some strings on this baby, and see how she sounds. And we'll do a full setup, and the Rat Strat will be finished. Okay, well, wiring's done. It was a bit of a challenge, but I think it turned out really nice. And important part is it's done. Pickups work, the switch works. I'm happy. Ready to get some strings on this. And that's what we'll do in the next video. So thanks for watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. Come back, see me string this thing up. We'll do a full setup on it, get it sounding like silk. It's going to be awesome. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe now. You can finish watching this build, then watch me build my bass, repair this other guitar, redo all the wiring on my Strat, redo that Strat completely, build some amp cabinets and mini amps and speaker cabinets, and 1,000 other things I have lined up to do. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.